Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.4.1 Feature Supportability Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and as part of the training module we will be talking about the enhancements made to Vaia, which is the Clarity's AI capabilities. Specifically, we are going to be covering quite a few enhancements that have been made to Vaia. The first and foremost is the fact that the Vaia capability within Clarity is now GA. In addition, we will also talk about the ability to use AI agents for all the Gen AI capabilities that exist in Clarity, the ability to define files as a data source for your AI agents, ability to validate any AI models that you might have configured within Clarity, ability to use view actual AI error messages within Clarity. So if there is an error message that maybe while running your AI capability, AI throws an error message, we will display that back to the end user itself. Ability to now include RTF attributes, rich text fields attribute within your AI agent prompt, ability to see your AI consumption using the queries functionality, and finally we have now added the support for Gemini's API in addition to the Vertex API that used to exist. With that, let's see the product in action. So I'm going to first start off in the Clarity administration side. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the administration and going to go to system option. What I want to point at is for any customers that are either performing a new install or performing an upgrade, and they did not, for anybody that is upgrading and they did not in the past had enabled AI, you will see, in fact, both new and upgraded customers will now see under system option this new flag. This is the activate via AI service. Customers that did not in the older release have activated the AI service using the dev toggle would have this flag turned off. Any customer that might have enabled it in the past and then had it activated here, they will then retain that information. But for all customers, this setting will now be available, and they can check this box to start seeing the AI capabilities available. The second piece, once this is enabled, there is, for those customers that have not used any AI so far and are enabling this for the first time, there is a new access right, which again all of this is covered in the older releases when this was beta, but I'm just repeating for the purpose of anybody that's going to be using it for the first time. So there is this access right within Clarity that after you enable it in the system option, this access right needs to be granted to your administrators to basically perform the configuration of the Clarity AI, which is the Vaia, as well as to configure your AI service within Clarity. Next, I'm going to go to the integration. So for those that might have seen this in the beta versions, in Clarity, integration is where you would define your AI service. In my case, I've defined several links because just for demo purposes, I have linked up the various AI services or AI service providers that we support, which again for reminders is Google's Gemini, Microsoft Azure, and OpenAI. So I've configured all of those. The one I want to point specifically is in the prior releases, so prior to 16.4.1, we used to support Google's Gemini using the Vertex API and private key only. And that is this configuration right here. So Vertex API is what is configured behind here, and I have a private key for that. Starting this release, we now also support the Google's Gemini using the Gemini APIs and using the API key. So that is enhancement in 16.4.1. And then the other ones, which is the Microsoft Azure and OpenAI, both of those still continue to support API keys. So wanted to point that out. All right, next I'm going to go into the modern UX, and in here I am going to navigate to the administration side. So within the modern UX administration side, the first thing you will see is that the Vaia tile no longer has the beta flag. So it is now GA. This tile is only available once you activate in the system options and you grant yourself that license, the access right. Once done so, you will come in here, and the change between older or the beta version of this and the GA version, the first thing you'll observe is now that we have 3 tabs only rather than 4. And you would notice that the enable AI, which used to be used for Gen AI capabilities, that has been removed, and all of those configuration from enable AI has been now moved to AI agents. So anybody that was using this functionality in the beta mode and had configured Gen AI capabilities, those will be automatically migrated to the new AI agents. As in my case, you can see all of these were configured in the beta version, which is older release of Clarity, which is 16.4.0 and below, before. We have migrated all of those to the AI agents tab. Next, I'm going to go first actually within here to the AI models area. And this is where I would configure my integration with the specific model that I want to use. The thing I want to show here is the ability to verify if your model has been configured correctly now is made easier. You can essentially, when you come into the AI models, you can, once you've done the configuration, do a right mouse click and you will get a new menu option called Validate Model. When you click on that, we perform a call using the API that is configured, and once the call comes back successfully, we will let you know that your configuration is correct. Let's test this out. So if you remember, the Vertex API is the one that was based on the older API that was there, which is the Vertex API using the private key. Let's do the same for Gemini API using the API keys. And let's do that validation. And again, we take the data and we make a quick call, and we come back and let you know that is also successful. So that shows that now I can use the Gemini API using the API keys. I can do that for one more, but if my configuration was not correct, like in this example, I have intentionally configured my OpenAI with a key that I have exhausted all the tokens. So if I run that, it comes back and it tells me that it was not able to successfully communicate. Again, if I do for Azure, it'll come back and tell me that is also successful. In fact, let's do this one more time. And there, now it tried to do it again, and this time the AI gave me a better error, which is it's telling me that I have exceeded all my current token for my OpenAI. So the error message that we get from the AI, so the first time it was a generic one, the second time it gave me a specific message, and it tells me exactly why this is not configured correctly. So we do display the exact error message to the end users as well as the administrator. So if the end user was running this and the error comes back from the AI, we will display that to the end user so that they can use and act on it accordingly. All right, next I'm going to leave this configuration as is. I am going to go into my AI agents. Again, as you can see, all my agents for all the types and stuff have been configured. The first thing I want to call out is you would now notice the 3 columns and there are various values in here. For each agent, we have the type. The type is basically, from a clarity perspective, it's your studio object. So whether it's a project, roadmap, that'll be your type. Context, now we have 3 contexts. The first is workspace, the second is object, and the third is attribute. Anybody that took the training in 16.4.0, you would remember that workspace refers to the higher level space that includes all the instances of the specific type. So in this example, it's basically run the agent for the project at its workspace level, which includes all the projects that this user has access to. So that's what the workspace is. Object context means I am within the object or within the specific instance of this type of project. And now the new one that is added is the attribute, which means when I'm running this agent, I want to perform the AI action and I want to perform it specifically on that attribute configured within this type. Right? So in this example right here, for project, I want to do the generate expected business outcome on my project, and it's going to be an attribute. Right? The attribute is going to be the business object itself. Business outcome in this case. And the next one is the chat panel and text field. So the output location can be either chat panel or text field. Anybody that was using 16.4.0 or before, your only option was chat panel. Starting 16.4.1, we now have text field, and the text field option is only available when you are using an attribute. That means that when I'm running the agent against the specific attribute on this object, I want the result to go to my text field instead of the chat panel. That's really where this comes in. Let's try to define one, and then we'll dig more deeper into each one of the agent types. If I was to define one, again, you would see the first thing is now they have 4 values that can be populated when I'm trying to define a new agent. The first goes into the type. This is essentially which Clarity Studio object do I want to define this for. So let's just say for demo purpose, I am going to define it for the project object. Next definition is at what level of this type is this agent going to work? Is it going to be at the workspace, which is the highest level that includes all the projects? Is it at an individual project instance, or is it going to be at the specific attribute itself within that project? If I select workspace, the output location is automatically populated to chat panel, and that is my only option. I do not get an option to select attribute. Same thing if I say at the object level, my output location will remain chat panel, attribute is still not editable. If I say that I want the agent to run against an attribute, now my output location is editable and so is my attribute. So this is where it's telling me that when I'm running the agent against the attribute, I can have the result of my agent go to a chat panel, or the result can go to a text field. If I and then I can select which attribute specifically on this object is this going to run against. What that means is similar to the GenAI capability, the AI agent will be available right next to that attribute that I configure right here. All right. Let's go look at some of the existing ones so that we can see once it is configured how it will look like. To make that a bit easier, I'm going to change my view. Now I can see by specific types, and let's just drill down into the project itself. So first I'm going to go into the project, and I'm going to go in here. You can see for project I've configured all three types. There's one at the workspace level, and only chat panel is the option available there. And when I see there are two agents configured to run at the workspace level. If I open one of them up, you can see that now I have again the name of the agent, the configuration, which is the context location for my agent. That's all grayed out, which means after I define my agent, I cannot change these values. My prompt, I have my options that are the data sources, which could be the metadata, the data source as CSV, and there is now a new option called add file, and I'll cover that too. And then right below that is the option to include attachments to my agent. What this means is now when I'm defining my agent in the older release of Clarity, which is 16.4.0, my only option was a data source. The data source as CSV was the Clarity report of type data extraction CSV. That was the only thing I could include. However, starting 16.4.1, I can now upload files into my agent's attachment attribute. A key point to note: not every file type is supported by every AI service. Different AI services, and then within those services, different models will support different file extensions. We recommend that you read up on your AI service provider and the model and what file types will they allow you to use. So you can configure that specific, you can upload the file in here, and whatever file is uploaded then is going to be made available to the prompt as well as be available to the end user. All right, so just for and I'll show you one that has that ability to add that file. But the other thing, as I mentioned, the agent the agent will allow you to upload the file, but the AI service will allow you to will only work with certain file types. We do have an ability in here, so that's another enhancement that is done, which is within the AI model page where you're configuring your AI service. You do have an option to configure the file upload parameters. What this means is, and so there are going to be 3 new attributes that are now available in Clarity under AI models. These 3 attributes indicate that if you want to use files as part of your AI agents, then there are these parameters that should be configured. There is a parameter called file upload URL. What this means is if your AI service provider will not handle the files as part of the in-stream prompt, then it will ask you to upload the file using a separate URL, such as in OpenAI case, it wants certain files to be sent using its file separate endpoint to handle its files. Same thing for your Microsoft Azure. For Gemini, it'll handle as part of InStream itself. That means as part of the payload, we can take the file and include it in the actual call being sent to your AI service. Again, I'm pointing this information out. We will have all of that in our documentation that you can refer to, as well as you can talk to your AI team that should be able to guide you on this specific piece. But it is again important to know that this needs to be configured depending on which one of the models you are using. The second parameter is if you wanted to restrict the size of the file that you can include in your agent, then you can configure that right here. Like in my example, I've configured my Gemini to only allow up to 10 megabyte file size. So individual file can maximum be of the size 10 megabytes. If you do not populate this value, then we will use the Clarity's default file size restriction in terms of uploading that file. And the last one is once you find out from your AI service provider which file types they allow you to use, you can configure those types right here. This essentially helps for your administrator that once it's configured in here, that if they're trying to upload a file type that is not supported, then we will inform the admin right away so that it does not need to be sent to the AI and then AI throwing an error message. So this is essentially populate your file extension so that we can then allow only those file extensions to be included in the agent. So these three are new parameters and the administrators should configure them in order to use the file upload capabilities within the agent. All right, let's go back in here. And again, we were looking at the project, looking at the workspace, and in this workspace, two different agents that can be configured. The other one is let's look at the object level. Same thing, only chat panel is allowed, and in this case I have the project health check that basically allows me to run the agent at that level. But let's dig a little bit deeper into the attribute configuration. So in this case, for the project under attribute, I have both chat panel and text field available. If I expand the text field, I have the agents that are configured to run against respective attributes within my project. And let's open up one of them, which is let's look at the generate objective. Again, this is configured. When you have the attribute configured as your context type and your output location is text field, in this configuration, you will notice that I do not have an option to define a follow-up prompt. And the reason for that is because when I am asking the agent to run, I want the output of the agent to go directly into the attribute itself. It is basically populate the content of the attribute. At that point, there is no chat panel, there is no ability for a user to interact, so there's really no need for a follow-up prompt. Hence, we don't need the follow-up prompt to be defined. So that is no longer available if you have context attribute and the output location is text field. If I go back out and let's go to the project again, let's go to the attribute and let's look at the chat panel. In this case, I'm going to look at the review of the objective. So this is configured at the project attribute, but my output location is chat panel. When I go inside here, you would see that in this configuration, I do have a follow-up prompt available to me. That is because in the output location as chat panel, that means the chat panel will open up trying to providing a feedback on how well the attribute content is populated. And I can have the user, if I want to, either predefine follow-up prompts or even free text entry if I want them to type and interact with it. In this example, I have neither one configured, but I could if I wanted to. The other thing you would notice is I have now a file added to my attachment. And again, adding the file in this case is as simple as you click on the choose file. I will get my option to select the file, and once I'm in there, I can pick any one of those files. So let's just add this file, and the file gets uploaded to my agent. The fact that I've added the file to my agent does not mean that the file will be sent automatically to the agent when the agent is executed. We have provided the flexibility to say when and where should these files be available. In this example, I've uploaded two files. The first one, OKR methodology, I do want that to be as part of my agent execution. In that case, then what I would do is I'll define my prompt, and in there I would say, like in this example, that when you're reviewing the objective, review it using the methodology as defined in, so right here, using the methodology as defined in, and then right here I've populated my file. So let's do that again just for reference. I'm going to take this out. I would say that using the methodology as defined in. Now to add that I want this agent to use the methodology as defined in this document rather than looking at both the files, just look at this one. To do that, I will have my cursor right there. I'll go into add file. When I do that, you would see only the two files that have been uploaded are available in this list. I will select the one that I want, and you can see that it populated that. That means when this agent runs, it'll send this prompt, and this file will be included in the prompt, which is the OKR methodology, but the management discussion will not be included. The management discussion will be a file that will be available for the end user if they want to use it at a later case. So let's look at that example too. So if I go back out here, I'm going to go look at my strategic theme, and at the attribute level, I am going to go to the chat panel, and in here sorry, not at the attribute level. In this case, I'm going to go to my workspace chat panel, and I'm going to go into my strategic alignment. And here I have multiple documents, but none of those are included in my prompt. So there are three files, none included in the prompt, but they are available to the end user. So now when I run these specific ones, you will see how they can be referenced. And I'll show both of those. In continuing to first understand all of this agent configuration, the next one I wanted to talk about is in the area of the status summary artifact. So in fact, one of the very first capability that we added in Clarity for AI was the ability to summarize the status of your project. That capability is now also converted over as an AI agent, and you would see that under the status report type for that attribute that you've configured, we now have two agents in my example, which was the generate and revise that I had prior. Those are now available right here as two different agents. If I was to go inside one of them, we've migrated over from the older release to the 16.4.1 your prompt, and to that prompt we've now added a new data provider or data source, which is the data source of CSV context. This is done automatically as part of the upgrade. We have added an out of the box report which is built on a query based data provider, and that data provider pulls in the same artifacts as what the old agent or the old AI action for status report summary used to provide. I will show you how, if you wanted to modify that, how you could do that and then change that in here. So first, again, just to understand, upon upgrade, we move the old AI action to the new AI agent. We have an out of the box report and we add that report to your agent. All right. And this agent, if it was active prior to the upgrade, will remain active after the upgrade. So you will see right here, enabled, this will remain enabled. If you were using the roadmap summary, that has also been migrated over to the AI agents, and this is what the name of that new agent will be. But after the upgrade, this will be disabled. And the reason for that is because we do not have an out of the box report that provides exactly the same information at what the old AI action used to have, which AI action used to basically read off of your screen what information you're looking at, and then based on that, send that to the AI. That is not there. Instead, we recommend that you create a new roadmap based report with the specific information that you would want the agent to leverage, and then configure that with your roadmap. All right, so let's go look at that, exactly those two things. So first, I'm going to go in and I'll show you the out of the box, the status summary report that we've provided, how you can make a copy of that and then use that in your the status report summary agent. And I'll also show how you can use you can create your own and then use the roadmap summary report in this roadmap generate roadmap summary agent. All right, so let's go into my reporting. Within this reporting, let's go into the report designer, and in the report designer you will see there are several out of the box reports, which is basically configured under the standard view, which means those are the out of the box ones. In here, if I was to search for status summary, so you can see there is one called status summary artifacts sample. If I open that up, you'll see it has the column for the investment ID, the status report ID, and the specific artifacts that used to be available in the old status summary. Right? This report is based off of a data provider, which is called also status summary. Status summary artifact, and you can see that this is being used by the status summary artifact sample. All right. If I did not want to use all the same artifacts that are there, maybe I want to modify it, I can do so by making a copy of that report. So it's as simple as that. I can go into my report designer. Again, let's find my status summary. I can select it. I can say copy. At this point, it'll ask me for a name for this. So let's change this to status summary and let's just call it for AI. My only option for the data provider is to make a copy of that data provider. So let's call that the same status summary. Actually, let's call it like this for this one. That's the naming convention I've been using, so I know I can easily find it. All right, once I do that, I'll go ahead and make a copy of both the report and the data provider. And you can see right there that the report copy is made. Report is in the draft status by default, so we'll come back to that. Let's go back to the data provider side. Let's go again. I have it pre-filtered to based on certain names. So here, this was the one, AI status summary artifact, that is being used with the report that I just made a copy of. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go into the edit mode for this. This data provider out of the box is query based. There is no specific object that it is pulling the information. It is purely just query based. I can go into the query section. I can go into the specific query and look at the query itself, which now has multiple unions pulling in the specific artifact for that specific object. If I did not want a specific artifact to be included, then all I have to do is just delete that from here. The way to look at that is each one of these artifacts has specific information like end date, start date, and so on. So in my example, let's say I do not want issues. I can go find the open issues or the total issues. All I would do is just highlight that section and I can delete it. Or if I want, I can just add some new artifact, which again was not available or possible in the old status report summary, and that was one of the things we used to get asked by on a regular basis, like, well, what if I want a different artifact or a new artifact that's not there? By us opening this up to use query, you now have full control as to what artifacts you want to use for your project. All right, so once I've done that, I'll go ahead and click on validate. It'll come back and say, yep, it's all good. I can now go back out to my data provider. In fact, I'm going to now go back to my report designer. Let's go into my AI reports. Let's search for my AI report, which is this guy right here, because remember I called it for AI. In this case, now the issues would not be there. All I have to do is just go ahead and publish this one. By publishing, it becomes available to my agent. Before I go out, let's just, for reference sake, I also, again, I don't need to show you how to do that, but I also created a roadmap summary item. Essentially, this is a simple report I've created that has the roadmap specific information as to the different scenarios, the roadmap items, and so on. Again, whatever information I feel that should be relevant for my roadmap summary, I can build that report. It could be a query based, it could be object based, and then make that available. If you want to learn how to write your own reports, there are separate training modules for those. Using that, you can write your own report that can be then used for AI. All right, now at this point, I'm going to go back to my AI agents. I'm going to go back in here, and first let's go into my status report. So now what I want to do is I want to go back to my status report generation. In here, this is the out of the box report. I don't want to use that. I can take that guy out. I can add my new report with my new artifacts by saying add data source from CSV. Right. I'm going to go find it, and remember it was status report summary for AI, not the sample one, but for AI. Once I do that, it'll ask me what key attribute should I use. This is important. At this point, you will not pick the investment, but you will pick your status report ID, because you're tying this to that status report object rather than the investment directly. So I'm going to pick the status report ID. I've added that, and now I have my custom status reports available to my agent. I can do the same for my roadmap. Again, it's the same process where I can go into my generate roadmap summary. In here, I can basically do the same thing. I can say go back in here, roadmap summary items, and I would then tie that to my roadmap ID in this case, and I can add that. Right. Once I've done important to remember that for the roadmap summary, if you do plan to use that existing out of the box one, make sure that after you've populated the report, you enable it. Otherwise, it will not be available to you. Again, a reminder, the report I added to my AI agent was something custom I built. It is not shipped as part of the product. It is not available upon upgrade. It is just something I had created. And again, we did not ship one out of the box for the reasons that different artifacts are relevant to the users. So we want you to define it, and building report is pretty straightforward. All right, now that I've configured my agents for my status report, I've configured it for my roadmap as well as for my projects and so on, I should be good to now start seeing the different agents in action. Quick reminder, as I go through it, I will point out that a couple of these do have documents included in them. Specifically, when I go through it, the project one. So again, as a reminder, when I go into the project attribute and I do a review of objective, I do have OKR methodology because that is the methodology I want to use. So again, this is just a reminder. We just covered it, but as a reminder. And the second agent that I will run is the strategic theme, which would be at the workspace level. I have 3 documents listed here, none included in the prompt. All right, let's go run these agents. Let's see them in action. So the very first one I'm going to run is going to go into the project, and it's going to be in the status report summary. So this is the Gen AI capability that I'm going to perform using the AI agents. So I'm going to go into my status, and in here I will have that attribute, which is the status narrative attribute. Notice that the icon that is being displayed, the Vaia icon, is the same. It is respecting my branding that that I can define. Again, for those as a reminder or refresher, from 16.4.0 we do provide the capability to brand your AI. So you can have your own avatar or your icon that you want to display for your AI. In my case, out of the box, this is blue icon. I uploaded a red sparkles to indicate it's different than what is out of the box. And you can also brand the name. So I left the name in this case, which is Vaia, but if I called it something else, then hovering over it would always give that the name that I've branded. So again, that's a refresher from 16.4.0. That functionality is there, and it's available under the same AI agent configuration. That was the third tab called branding in there. The other thing is, as you can see now, that because I've configured, this is the attribute level agent. This on the top right, because I'm inside a project, this is the object context agent. So in my first case, I'm going to run the attribute level where I want to populate the status narrative. I can go ahead, and when I click on it, I get the 2 options, generate or revise. This is basically, these are the 2 agents that are configured against this attribute. That's why they're both available to me. All right. When I click on the generate, at this point we kick off the call to AI. We basically take the data, which is the artifacts as defined in your report that you in my case, I had the custom report that I had created. I send that information along with the prompt, and I then get my response back. All right, so I did have the total issues, but I took out individual issue information, so it doesn't have any individual issue in this case. I only have the total count in here. All right, and it's generated the data based on my prompt. So this is the attribute level AI agent running, populating the data. Next, I'm going to go into my properties of my project, and I'm going to run the second attribute level agent, which is to go against the chat panel. So in this case, it is the attribute context, but the output location is going to be the chat panel. Reminder, this is the one where I'm saying review the content. So right here, I get the three options. I'm going to run the review, and this is the one where I am telling that look at this content for my objective in this project. Review this against the methodology as defined in the document. And I am sending that document as part of my agent itself. It is taking both the information and it is sending to the LLM, and then it's coming back and saying, oh, you wanted me to review this based on OKR methodology. OKR methodology as defined in your document should be broken down to make sure that you have your objectives and key results. So it's giving the example back saying you make sure you define key results 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you should write based on the document which has the methodology of the OKR methodology. That's one example of how I can reference a document. So in this case, if I have some other company references I wanted to use, instead of typing all of that up, I can upload that document and include that in my agent itself. One other piece I wanted to show before I continue with the running of the agents, because I'm looking at this specific review of the attribute. We have also enhanced that in the agents you have the ability to now define the attribute of rich text fields. So I'm going to go into my project and just to call that out under the chat panel, when I said review my objective, in here right there. So based on that methodology, and I have passed my original text right here, which is the objective. So objective is a rich text field, and I have the option to include that. Again, just for reference sake, I have that objective defined that I can send, which is a rich text field, as part of my prompt. So we now support that. In the older versions of 16.4.0 and before, you could not include rich text fields, but now starting 16.4.1, rich text fields can be added to the prompt itself. All right, let's continue on with running the agents, and the next one I want to run is in my workspace level. And this is the one, if you remember, where I said at the strategic theme workspace, have the agent for the strategic alignment. And when you run this, run it based on the prompt I'm telling you, but do not include any file. This agent is essentially set to basically look at the strategy that has been defined and then do an analysis based on what should be the company goals and what are the investments that are tied to this strategy, and come back and tell me if the investments that I have made do all of those tie to the strategy that I have planned for, or is there a misalignment? For each one of those, go through and do that full analysis and then come back and tell me if there is that misalignment. And that's exactly what this agent just did. It basically took all of that information. It said, these are your strategy. There is a misalignment, and this is where the misalignment is and what your budgetary impact can be, and so on. So all of that, it comes back and tells me. This part is not new, but what is new is now as a user, let's make this window a little bit bigger. Now, as a user, I want to have a follow-up question saying something like, maybe I want to compare that the investments I have made, how do they stack up compared to what my competition is doing? And maybe my competition information is something I manage in a document, and that document I might have included in my agent. So I can ask the question that based on the document, and at this point I want to reference that document that is included in the agent. So when I type the plus sign, this is where, remember those three documents that I had uploaded to my agent but I had not included, those three documents become available for me to reference. And I can say that based on the competitor's offering, tell me if I am aligned with what my competition is doing. And I can send that. At this point, what the uh, what the agent is doing is basically taking what I'm asking to do. It is taking this document, which it did not have in the past, but it is available to the agent. It's going to take only this document, send that as part of this prompt, and then do the analysis and then come back and tell me the result. Again, it's taking that information, but it is also retaining this prior context. So it also knows all of this information in terms of what was my strategy, what are my investments that I'm working on, and now based on this new competitor offering, it is doing that alignment and it's telling me that what my competitor is offering, what I'm working on. So there it has specific competitor information and it's telling me where I'm aligned, where I'm not, and where there might be risk for me that I should look at. And it also tells me specific gaps, like in this case, the competitor's activity that is there. They've launched some green spending. I'm not doing any green spending or don't have any investment tied to it. So it does that analysis using those documents that were sent. So anytime the, if a document is included as an attachment to the agent, that document is available to the end user by using the plus sign, and that's when those come up for the user to look at. All right. The last piece that I wanted to show is in the area of, as an administrator, what if I wanted to see where these, how much token am I consuming by running these different AI capabilities? This is something that's available, meaning every time you run the call to the AI, we track the tokens and we track where the call is being made for, and which user has made that call. This is mostly to help you understand where the cost might be going. To see that information, you could write a query. So again, in my example, I wrote a query and the details for the tables where that information is stored is available in our documentation. And based on that, you can write your own query. And that's what I've done. I've written my own query, so it is not shipped out of the box. I'm going to go into administration. Using the queries module that is there under modern UX administration, I can go into that queries and I created a new query. Again, this is not out of the box. I created a new query myself. In here, I've referenced the tables that are out of the box, and here are the tables that are available. Writing this, I can now see where the consumptions are there. So here I can see there was just calls made right now by me, the administrator, to Gemini service. It used Gemini 3 preview, and this was the prompt token size and the response token size, and it was successful. And of course, depending on what all I want to see, in this case I had made it against the strategy object. So there were two calls made against strategy objects. Remember, the first one was to do the analysis, second one was to include the document. Prior to that, we made a call to the project objective to review. So all of that information and what tokens were consumed are easily viewable in here. So this should help you understand in terms of your AI consumption by Clarity. And that's the end of our demonstration for the Vaia enhancement as part of Clarity 16.4.1. And that concludes this module. Thank you everyone for listening.